Peter is the Disaster Risk Reduction and CVA Manager at the Kenya Red Cross Society. He leads the anticipatory action work, climate change adaptation, nature-based solutions, and environmental conservation, contributing significantly to the restoration of ecosystems and enabling communities to understand, cope, and be resilient to the increasing and varied shocks. He also leads the CVA component within Kenya Red Cross. Is a member of the Africa Regional Disaster Risk Reduction Community of Practice, Secretariat member of the Kenya Anticipatory Action Technical Working Group, member of the Kenya Climate Change Adaptation Working Group, chair of the Kenya Cash Working Group, a co-chair of the Red Crescent Global Cash Peer Working Group, and a member of the IASC and UN OCHA-led Global Cash Advisory Group. Where? Okay, I'm tired. That's a great one. Lastly, Peter has successfully spearheaded numerous initiatives seeking to improve the policy aspects and coordination challenges in Kenya, and currently engaged in realization of the Kenya DRM bill that Peter will talk about. Can we appreciate him as he comes to the stage? And then the next amazing panelist is Dr. Joyce Kimtai, that I've had the pleasure of knowing and listening to her contributions for the longest time. And she is with the Kenya Meteorological Department and Grantham Institute for Climate Change and Environment, Imperial College, London. Welcome to the stage. Let's appreciate her.
This is a very important topic. And of course, there's been so many calamities happening in this country. At times, they get us when we are least prepared. At times, the preparations are there and then the calamities don't hit. Then we maybe don't take caution. Then the next time they hit worse. And I believe both of you have sat on these secretariats where you really have to get the deep work going and really also getting to be at the intersection of community aid and really supporting them to better prepare and build cushioning ecosystems. Just to start with Joyce, could you walk us through what early warning systems are and what elements make up a good early warning system from a scientific standpoint?
Thank you. First of all, I really want to appreciate the opportunity to be here today to speak about early warning systems, but also really to be part of the Earth Day. So today we are celebrating our planet. I woke up this morning reflecting on the extraordinary legacy of Pope Francis, who passed away yesterday. And it's really particularly because it was extraordinary in the sense that for him, it wasn't just about the church. I mean, even if you're not religious, you don't do church. But for him, it was about having like the deep care for the environment and really the compassion for the poor and the vulnerable. So I interacted with him in 2 occasions. That's the reason why I was reflecting on this today is for the 2 occasions that I interacted with him at the Vatican, where I was part of just a global network of scientists, social scientists, and other global leaders calling for action to actually protect the planet, is the way you would really, and I heard from the panelists, I really enjoyed. That's the other thing. It's really the kudos to the panelists that came before us, that they were really speaking about biodiversity, speaking about carbon markets, how to involve communities. It really resonated well with what I was reflecting on this morning on our relationship with the environment, that it starts there, that we really need to address issues of inequality, issues of consumerism, capitalism, really being very extraction, having that very extravist attitude or behavior towards a planet that we don't care for it. We're just like extracting for it. And that's the issue. That's why we are degrading our mother, our home, our only home that we have actually. We don't have a plan B, like this is the only home that we have. And before I can answer your question, I think the other thing that I I wanted to reflect on the issue of the carbon markets, but I knew that I would be given the floor anyway, so I said I could keep it for later. Is that I think that the conversation that we don't have, and it could sound very high level, is the fact that we have to be very careful with how we engage or deal with carbon markets, because there is the risks that decarbonization burden can be shifted to our regions, to the global south. So of course we know for sure, I mean, the whole principle behind carbon markets is that for people who are emitting, they can actually sell their credits so that we can, so it's like you're trading the carbon that you emit to the atmosphere to have it being synced somewhere else. So you don't want, so for us, we don't want really to commit our land so much. For me, I would really advocate for technologies that are not so much utilizing the land, and especially if you're not restoring the land or rehabilitating the land. If you're using land that is already fertile to do things, or land that actually could support food production, water provision, to trade carbon, it's very dangerous, because in the next 40 years or so, you find that we will be committing a lot of our land that could be supporting the population that is growing rapidly in the global south, and supporting, in terms of food security, in terms of water, in terms of, we know land is a huge capital that can be used for many other things. But anyway, that's the only reflection that I have to make. Like, every time that's a conversation that it put on the side. But because we know for sure that the carbon majors, the biggest emitters, they do not always have the best interest at heart for them. No, they're not actually willing to stop emitting. They love what they're doing. It's giving them profits. It's how the world has been built. The Western economies believe that it's actually fossil fuels, oil and gas, that have met them where they are. So they see it, they link it with prosperity, they link it with freedom, they link it with superiority, in a way that they have, the way their economies have been built, they've really been dependent on this. So to them, they're looking for a way that they can just continue doing what they've been doing for the last 200 years, but then have someone else actually take that burden. So that is the conversation that we sometimes it gets through the cracks without, when you're engaging with carbon markets. So I think it's a good initiative, especially if it's supporting restoration, rehabilitation, bringing technologies that can actually help communities provide clean solutions. But if that is not the case, then it can be detrimental. Anyway, so let me go to my early warning. So what makes an early warning system is 4 pillars, basically. I think most of the times when people hear early warning systems, they think it's just like warning, like you're warning me in advance. You're giving me information in advance. So it's more than that. It's actually a framework. And that has 3 pillars. So you're starting with risk knowledge, like who is at risk? What risk is happening? Where are people located? What are the prominent risks in this region? For example, in Nairobi, we know a huge risk is flooding, extreme rainfall. We know our drainage systems are not good enough. In a way that if we experience rainfall now for like maybe 150 millimeters in 24 hours, we definitely know that our informal settlements will flood. And some of the infrastructure in the city will be strained. So you first want to understand who is at risk. What is the risk? So that's the first one. That's the first pillar. The second pillar is now the monitoring, observation, and the forecasting. Like, where do we have the data? How would you analyze the data? And then you disseminate the data. And then you go to the warning dissemination or the communication. So you want to take that information. So you've mapped the communities that are at risk, or the regions that are at risk. You know what kind of risk is there. And then you've done your analysis, you've used your data. So KMD, for example, will do that. They will monitor the Earth system. They will use the weather information to actually produce the forecasts. So after doing that, now you do this dissemination itself, which can be combined with communication. Like, how do you communicate? How do you break it down? And then the last pillar, which is very important, is on the preparedness and response, which Murgor will talk more about. I mean, he's more of a specialist on that, is on the preparedness and the response capabilities. So how prepared are the communities? How are our institutions prepared to actually respond to that disaster or to that risk that has been mapped? How is our communities able to use that information that was communicated to them to make decisions, informed decisions? Yeah.
Can we name the 4 pillars of the 4 steps of early warning systems? Can we now mention them? Well, I see people can mention them. I will follow you and ask the questions after this. But really very good to reflect on those, Dr. Joyce. And actually just to give a shout out that Dr. Joyce is among the Kenyan scientists who actually put together the Kenya Climate Impact Synthesis Report, which was launched last year. And I'll encourage you to actually look it up and just try to understand where Kenya is currently, like what are some of the issues affecting us, the issues ranging from adaptation to resilience, and really, the opportunities to leverage on our natural resources around the climate crisis. But also asking you to check up our Earth Now Media YouTube channel, where we actually broke down all these into 4 episodes to just explain to you around that whole report and why it matters for us to be aware of that. But coming to you, Peter, from the perspective of our disaster response, how do these systems translate into action on the ground? Do you think communities are effectively receiving and acting on these warnings that you are giving?
Thank you very much, Kaluki, and thank you, Dr. Kimtai, for just articulating those issues. Good morning, everyone. First of all, it's a very. Could you pat the person sitting next to you at the back for being part of this conversation? If you want to slap them, you can slap them, but I just said pat. Yeah. I mean, just be nice to each other. Yeah, but that's you see, you're smiling now. We can see it's getting warmer. But first of all, it's a good thing that you took your time in this cold, chilly morning to prioritize this conversation. It's very important. And in the interest of time, I'll just pick it up from where the conversation is going. And the question is, are communities prepared? Are they receiving? Are they acting on this information? Very pertinent questions. So I want to ask, who is the community? Who is the community? It's very important to understand the spectrum of the community. And I would even dare ask, are you part of the community? And if you're part of the community, what is your role as part of the community? I want you to reflect back at a time probably you received some of this early warning information, if you knew even about it, and what you did about it. I don't know if anybody used the weather information to come in today to inform how you're dressing. Anyone? Or you just woke up and you said, inakaa leo kutanyesha. You've had that phone, hii jua ni ya mvua. Then it doesn't rain. Yeah, but that's just one of the answers, Kaluki, as to what communities do. We are a reflection of our communities. So if, first of all, we don't even know that there's early warning information existing about whether it will rain or it won't rain, and that can even inform on what cloth you carry, or if you should carry an umbrella, or if you shouldn't, then that is just a reflection also of how the communities behave. In fact, let me answer by asking a question, because I'm a very pragmatic person. Why is it that sometimes we find ourselves in a place it's raining, we don't have a jacket or an umbrella, and you're, oops. Then I would challenge you, go back. In fact, do that practically. Go back to that day you were rained on and you're not prepared, and check if there was a weather information about that day that could have helped you not to be rained on. We are talking about early warning, and I'm not losing you. I'm just trying to cement to you the problems we are having. That it's not just about those communities that we are thinking in Budalangi or Faflang. I began by asking you, who is the community? So to answer your question, there still needs to be a lot of conversations for us to get to the point of fully maximizing the wonderful early warning information that is there for us to utilize. We sometimes struggle as a response institution. We are seen majorly as a response institution, but people don't know we do a lot of preparedness. Personally, I am given to risk reduction. I'm given to, yes, I've done response in my life. There's a time I was in the operations unit, but as a disaster risk reduction manager, my work majorly is before the event happens. Everything before the event happens, and when it happens, I let another unit take care of it. I start thinking post-event. And so for me, it is very critical how we have early warning information, predictive information, what we can anticipate so that we can make communities take action before situations happen. As a fact, it is analyzed that on damage and loss, it is analyzed that for every $7 you use in response, if you take early action, you may end up just using $2. So you save about $5. You see how expensive response vis-a-vis taking early action is. And so early warning is important. Sorry, I'm using a very long route to give you the answer, but I want it to sink in. So before we point fingers to the communities, we point fingers to ourselves because you're a reflection of a community. We have problems, first of all, utilizing the information that is available. Why don't we utilize that information? Number one, is it because we don't believe the information? Is it because we think it's for the other person? Is it because we think it's for media to share? That sometimes is the issue. So going to the crux of the matter, I want to use the unfortunate last year Maimahiu incidents because that is the most recent one that can resonate with us. It is quite unfortunate, as I'm answering your question, that that whole day before, we struggled to communicate to people to move. We struggled. We knew there was a disaster coming. We had seen it. It started at Kijabe bursting, and people were seeing traffic at Kijabe. We were trying to warn people downstream. People didn't take heed, and in a matter of hours. But personally, I'm alive today, by the way, because I took heed. I took heed. That day, I was driving from, and I want you to see how real early warning information is. I was driving from Eldoret. I got to Delamere. Those of you who know where Delamere is. And when I was at Delamere, I got the wind of that there's heavy traffic in Kijabe. And so I called our emergency operations center. And the emergency operations center gave me the scenario. And based on the early warning, a car that was ahead of me chose the Maimahiu route. I chose the bypass route, and that's why I'm alive today. I chose the highway. That car, unfortunately, was swept in the mudslide. Now, are you seeing the difference of utilization of early warning information? So I'm just using that example to cement and to answer the question of some of the challenges we have. Unfortunately, yes, give credit where it's due. There's a lot of improvement on utilization of early warning information, but we are still struggling heavily. Because like that night, had people taken heed and moved, we would have talked of, yes, there was a mudslide, but people's lives were saved. So there is still a lot of tension between the early warning information to receiving the information to acting on the information. There's been questions around language barrier. There's been questions around even how the information is packaged. There's been questions around medium of communicating this information, and there's been questions around even the timing of the information reaching. As I finish in that answer, 2 weeks ago again, I was in Mombasa during I don't know how many of you saw the demolition exercise of the building that was a risk. Yeah, I was deployed to that mission, again, because it was a risk reduction. And we were meant to demolish the building at about 9 a.m. We had to delay until 12:30. You know why? Because some stubborn people were in the houses saying, we've been told it is safe for us to be here. That catchment area had about 60,000 households. By 6 a.m., we had started, the day before, we had done a lot of campaigns of sensitizing communities, sharing early warning information, letting them understand why we are asking them to move, that the noise itself, you know, people are looking at, sitaanguka hapa tu, mambo yenu mengi, sijui nini, mbona mniangushe, sijui all those kind of stories, yeah? But you see, the people who were thinking around it thought about even the injuries. For the first time, we evacuated Coast General 100%. 200 plus patients, including those in ICU, being evacuated because of the noise, because of the debris, because of any form of risk. But you looking as an onlooker, you want to start criticizing and castigating the people who are trying to, and make mockery. So for about 2 hours, we had to use other means to get a family of about 3 who are posing risk to the operation and not heeding to the early warning information. Yeah, but eventually we did what we did, and it's one of the, in my view, it's one of the most successful operations that went down with without casualties. Even the buildings where it fell was on a banda. It did not destroy the buildings around it. Those who heeded, again, we told people, leave your windows open. I wish we could all be taken there. In fact, we were wishing we could record that for people to see practically. The ones who heeded to open their windows, including the buildings next door, not a single window broke. Now, the stubborn ones who closed their windows, all the glasses were shattered. And then they say, you've damaged our property. So the question is, was there early warning? Did you receive it? Did you hear it? Then what did you do about it? So in short, Kaluki, as I give it back to you, there is a very big tension. Yes, there is very good products, and kudos to the Kenya Meteorological Department, kudos to the scientists, kudos to the menus of forecasts and the prediction, the prediction work that is there. There are very good products that are there right now with very high precision of prediction. I've been in this field for quite a while, and I can tell you there are times the predictions would be there and it would be ish-ish. But there are times, right now we are in days whereby you can count on the weather forecast, on the menu of forecast that is being used, and there are still practices to try and improve. There are still areas of growth, but there is a lot of growth. So they are producing the early warning information. There is still a very big challenge in the uptake of that information, including language barrier, including medium of communication, including now uptake of action. Yes.
Now, jumping on to Joyce, Peter has talked about, disseminating the information, getting people prepared. Do they even act on this information? I want to know from you, Joyce, what tools are you using for early warning systems and technologies, of course, in Kenya, especially around floods and droughts, which are prevalent in the country? And do you think these technologies and tools are working well so far?
That's a good question, and really thank you, Peter, for the very interesting, especially the examples that you're giving. I think these are the examples that Kenyans don't get to hear, because when you get to hear this, it resonates well with people. It reminds you of something that has happened in your neighborhood, or that has happened to someone. People didn't take action, or someone took action and it made sense to them. And the reason why Peter says that it's been a long way is I think for the longest time, when we say there's a lot of improvement that has happened and there's more that can be done, is that the society or the people, the communities were very distant from weather information, climate information. I will tell you for sure, and I say this every time, when I started my career, there was nothing in the television about climate change, for example. There was no mention of that. There was no mention of climate information or advisories. The only stories that we would hear were for Walter Francis saying that he would pick clouds and put the thunderstorms on that one end of the chart and stuff like that. So it was more of just a fun story that people would make. KMD, for example, was a very that organization that we don't know so much what you guys are doing. When I did my undergrad in meteorology, most people would ask me, sasa hiyo utakuwa unafanya nini? They didn't get it. And, but really a lot has improved. And I think, climate change is not a good thing, but I can say for sure it's changed the way we've perceived our weather, our climate. So us being in this crisis where we're seeing floods killing people, droughts killing people, it's so sad that something bad has to happen for us to start learning. But because our climate system has been changing and it's been modifying the way we experience weather, changing the way the weather affects us, is that we've now really started to understand and say, hey, what's this monster? What's happening? Do I need to know this information for me to make my decisions? Do I need this information for my day-to-day life? anything. So, and really I've seen that improve a lot, where nowadays I see like articles in the media about climate change. I do interviews a lot with the local media, with the international media, and it's really so a lot of that has changed. And so you asked me the question about what are the technologies, what do we do? So first of all, you look at all those pillars, and it's really very critical that for an early warning system to be effective, you have to have all these pillars being taken care of, and they all have to work together. So if one pillar is broken, so for example, if there is no proper communication, or if the forecast is wrong, or if you have not done your risk knowledge or risk assessment well, or there is no proper preparedness or proper response, the system is broken. So it's as good as broken. So you can have the three pillars work very well, but if one pillar is down, it's broken. So I can say the first thing in having technology or working, making sure that we have an effective early warning system, is trying to understand how can all these pillars work. So the first thing is we have really improved in the way we do the science, and I think you've said that. We have had a good grasp of our climate. We know what is happening, we know what is changing, we know what aspects of the climate we need to understand. We know if we want to understand, we want to predict about tomorrow or the next season or next year, we know what predictors to use. What are the drivers? What shows the changes? So that's the first thing that has really improved. And that has improved with a lot of training that has gone on in our department. A lot of people have been trained locally and internationally on how to do this, and that has improved a lot. We have known to use tools that exist like climate models. We're even starting now to incorporate a lot of like machine learning, artificial intelligence in some of the things that we do, collaborating with, of course, other institutions that are doing this. And that has really improved the way we understand our system. Of course, there are still difficulties in that. With climate change now, it's become very difficult to understand the changes in the system because they're very erratic. So it has made the system be very, it's dynamic anyway, but now it's become, the inconsistencies that exist, the erratic nature of it has become a little bit too chaotic in a way that it's really difficult to understand how the changes are happening. And the problem with that is that because the different components of the Earth system interact, so if this one changes in a direction that you've not understood, it can impact the other one. So it becomes very different sort of to grasp what is the effect of this on this, and what is this doing, how is this changing, and how the change of this affects this. So that's the challenge that we have now with the climate change. But the other thing is on, and I think Peter will know this more, or is in how we disseminate the information, what do we use. So we have had something called participatory scenario planning, which has really been a good model, where we engage with communities. So someone here, the panel here, that's why I was really fascinated with the panel before me, is they were really speaking about like the complementarity of science with indigenous knowledge. And that has become very critical in an early warning system. Because you have to complement the knowledge systems that exist. If you're going to speak to a Maasai in Samburu and you're just speaking to them about how we're going to have 55 millimeters of rainfall or above normal rainfall next month, they'll be like, I mean, yeah, I don't want to say what they would say, but of course they would not understand. The thing is, you want to speak to them to make it make sense to them, and also for them to be part of the discussion. So they need to tell you what they've been doing as them in observing the weather systems. What this time of the year, so whether it's March or April, what do you do? What happens? So you're sort of co-producing the information with them. So that's what we do. And in that, we're using dissemination methods that are palatable, that can be consumed. So whether it's a baraza, so whether you're having locals, local governments. So the thing with participatory scenario planning is that we're engaging people at the grassroots level. So we've decentralized the services. So you're taking a national forecast and you're taking it to the county and even to the ward level. So in the ward level, you pick people or representatives that actually can disseminate that information. Or you can use a medium that can be able to reach the people. So whether, if people have phones, you use SMSs. If they have smartphones, you can use an app. So there are apps that people can log into and check the weather. And people can receive SMSs on their phones, whether if they don't have a smartphone. Some actually, when even they attend like burials, they're being told about like how the season will be like. So I think we've really improved in how we've done this. And these are some of the new technologies. Of course, I would just like to finish by saying we have, of course, more of advanced technologies like flood monitoring, where we really monitor our rivers, river levels. We can tell that when a river is about to burst its banks, we can already issue that warnings. We have gauges in those rivers. And of course, we have the National Drought Management Authority that is really coordinating the National Drought Early Warning System. So it's really coordinating us. So it's like it's doing the multi-agency coordination in issues of drought. So we have a lot of these systems and technologies that we use. Yeah. Sorry, I can take a whole one.
Moving on, and I promise this will be the last two questions. Peter, you actually alluded to the two key questions I wanted to ask around the scenarios. One, that you issued an early warnings alert and community took it rightly, and then a situation where they did not take heed, and then the repercussions. I like that you brought the example of Kijabe and then of Mombasa. But then I just wanted to separately ask you, if you had the power to fix one thing in Kenya's early warning and early action system tomorrow, what would it be for you and why? Shortly.
Yeah, thank you. And just allow me to cement that by, I like examples because examples bring it home. And participatory scenario planning has been one of the best successes of bringing early warnings closer to communities. And you can see even the synergy when we are talking. We didn't even meet, we didn't prep, but you see the integration, yeah? For example, when she talks about the 4 pillars of the early warning system, the second pillar is led by KMD, the first pillar is led by NDOC, the third pillar is led by Communications Authority of Kenya, and the fourth pillar is led by Kenya Red Cross. Just to show you the integration and the deliberate efforts. Why am I saying this? Just to try to inch into the question of the things that we need to fix in Kenya. Yeah. And bringing an example, my grandmother once told me, you know, when you're learned, your learnedness makes you think your grandmother does not know. But it's only that she does not know it in the English you know it. She knows it in the vernacular, she knows it. And one of the times we were talking about, thank you, one of the times we were talking about moving, and she told me one thing: you make all the noise you want to make, but unless it reaches my knees. See, that's what early warning is for her. We are using millimeters, we are using other languages, but for her, the early warning for her is unless this water reaches my knees, it's not time for me to move. And I ask her why, and she says, all the years I have lived, any water on my knees and below I can handle, but anything above my knees I cannot handle. So it's time to move. Participatory scenario planning is teaching us that, to listen to how they are. Last year, again, we did a simulation in Budalangi, and we were putting flood markers because AI and science and technology was showing us to put somewhere. And the community were watching, and then they were saying, are you guys marking roads, or what are you doing? And we're like, no, we are not marking roads. These are called flood markers. Okay, flood markers. Then a 50-year-old man says, in my lifetime, there is no time water has reached there. But AI and science has shown us that it is there. I'm not trying to trash science and AI. What we are saying is we have to do ground truthing. The reason is the AI was not wrong. It's only that it didn't sense the topography, and so it gave a misinformation. So if we did ground truthing, we would have merged the two and seen, these are real case scenarios. So what would I fix? Because I'm trying to come home to what I would fix. Is just co-production. Co-production. Co-production, and co-production in the sense that the community members, all the stakeholders, including government, being in leadership. Because when we do this all together, we bring out a product that is bought in by everyone. And you don't have to tell anyone what they should do. The community will understand, I was playing a role in this, so this is what it means, you know? So if we can just do co-production, and then also the national institution that needs to have financing, we'll put financing for early warning. Like recently, I like that we launched the National Climate Information Services framework that now allows KMD to even start generating revenue out of the information services, which will now boost it to be able to produce more products. You see, so financing has been a big component. We can have a lot of talk about financing, but for me, I think even if finances are put, but we don't have co-produced products that are understood, like she said, that are palatable to the communities and can be utilized, then we shall just be whiling in the dark. We shall just be doing a lot of work, but no progress. Wow. Yeah.
Finance is important, but let's as well cooperate with communities. They're really so great. And I really know we are about less than 10 minutes to at the end of this panel. I just want to see whether we have any burning questions.
Yeah, my name is George Marwa from Green Aid Foundation, that is in Migori County, specifically in Kehancha in Kuria. Now, you talked about early warning, and it is maybe to our side that maybe I should ask, have you ever taken maybe an early warning majorly in Lake Victoria, in a sense that there is a lot of siltation that flows to the lake, mostly maybe from our side and the other rivers, because it's breaking the banks, mostly on the riparian land, and that goes maybe in the next maybe 10 or I don't know the time, it will get to cover the whole of the lake, and these will make the water start going back and reaching the residential area. And let's say, how long does it take for the early warning? Is it maybe 2 days, 3 days that you should come up with that? Yeah, thank you.
Mine is, first of all, to thank you, Peter, for what you've said about the collaboration aspect, because one of the key things that we have noticed, primarily our organization has also noticed, and maybe other grassroots organizations have noticed, is a missing up of grassroots and communities' voices. And primarily by the examples that you've given, it's clear and it's evident in the room that there is need to involve the communities. There is need to have them capacity enhancement, because they're already capacity built. They know. So mine is just really to appreciate you and just tell everybody in the room it's important for us to involve the communities in our planning, in our implementation. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. And you're asking spot-on questions, very spot-on questions. Thank you for the appreciation. Indeed, it couldn't be said better. But to your question, first of all, sorry that you experienced it, but I'm guessing you've learned from taking heed to early warning. But to your questions, number one, and like she said, it's a system, it's a process. There's what we call lead time to the event. So the lead time to the event determines the timing of releasing the early warning information. Drought is a slow onset, for example. So the early warning system for droughts will take a bit longer. Flood is a sudden onset, it's a slow onset. You have very little time to act for floods. The warning, the advisory can be today, and in 2 days you see very dire effects. Yesterday, practically speaking, we were just monitoring some things in Tana River. As we were taking some early actions in the morning, by the evening we were doing now response. It has switched to response. You see the little time that it gives you. So to your question on how much time, and I'm liking that you're observing things, the siltations, all those kind of things. This thing is very complex. Dr. Kimutai said something about one layered on another affects the other. Just using the example you've used of the Lake Victoria, we are monitoring what is calling the rising water lakes. And the rising water lakes is informing us about some of those things, and Lake Victoria is not an exception. It's downstream, so they're pouring into the lake, creating seepages, creating overflow of the riverbanks and everything. Now, that is one thing. That is what is happening. On the early warning, the communities, I'll give you an example. Budalangi, you had it, they say, serikali saidia. The government even tried to relocate these people. Do you know the challenges that were there? Very many cultural and structural challenges. People start saying, how do we leave the graves of our loved ones? This is where we've known. So there's so much dynamics that is affecting early warning beyond just what you're seeing on the face. In the lake there, the surrounding people, predominantly who've lived there for almost 40 years, please go just try and look at the graphs of the lakes on how they're behaving. You will see the lakes are now rising and reclaiming their lands for over 50 years. So in 50 years, you'll see there's been a whole generation that they've known this is our land. So they will be saying what? The lake has come to take our land. But the question is it the lake that has come to take your land? No, it is you who is in the lake's land. So just to answer you without taking much time, because I know there's time and he's doing a good job trying to keep us within time, is that the early warning is a dimension that needs everyone. That's why I'm saying co-production, having everyone. The communities need to understand they're in the water area. They need to understand their lead times. So when we're telling you move, don't say, wamesema miezi mingapi, miezi mitatu. So miezi mitatu si watu wafanya vipi? Watu wangoja, the last week ndio tunataka kuanza kufikiria where we'll go. Then serikali comes Bomoas, and then now you say, this government is ruthless. But you are actually given a warning 3 months beforehand. So there's a lot of conversation that needs to happen. I would like you to be at the forefront of being part of your community, and we can engage further because of the interest of time. To the question of urban planning and risk as I finish, and that's a pertinent one, linking with what happened recently in Mombasa. We cannot work in isolation. That's why I said co-production and stakeholders. We need you as architects, and I'm glad you're here as an architect, because as architects, you help us build what we are calling resilience infrastructure. We are now talking about on early warning and building back better, because they are linked. In El Nino, the roads were cut off. We could not access Wajir and all that. But building back better infrastructure, the preparedness activities, the early warning action would be to build roads that are resilient to the climate variation, to build buildings that are taking into account climate variation. So your question is spot on. It's a collaborative effort. Yes, and I can tell you, in our Kenya Anticipatory Action Technical Working Group, we have the urban, the Ministry of Lands and Land Use as part of the group. And we invite architects to be part of that, because you play a key role in making sure we have resilient infrastructure. I think you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I think you've said it all, but I just wanted to add to the point of resilient infrastructure. So at the moment, if AFW, so African Development Bank.
Yes, ADB.
Yeah, they're actually not giving out money if you've not done risk assessment on any infrastructure. Yeah. And I have been part of sort of providing technical support in building, in advising on risks. So I've done analysis of most risks in the country, especially on major roads. So we're now even looking at so they're planning to build an highway from Nairobi to Mombasa. And the first thing before they can even put one stone is actually to understand, to do risk assessment. So to understand, so if you're building a bridge, how are the temperatures likely to change in the future? So you're using projections. So you're looking at what is going to happen in 2030, 2050, 2070. So you don't want to design a bridge where, so for example, we don't want to have this expressway where we can only use it for 10 years and then it collapses. It's waste of resources, waste of time. Actually, we've borrowed money to build it, so it's just we're wasting resources to do this. So what they're doing now is we are assessing, we're making sure that the infrastructure is resilient. And I mean, as an architect, you understand things on return periods. So for example, like when you have like one in like a 10-year event, like it happens one in 10 years. What we're seeing now is they're happening more frequently. So you're having it happen more like every 2 years or 3 years. So if you don't have a system that is resilient to that, infrastructure that is resilient to that, that investment will be swept away, definitely. And that is, so I just wanted to say that it's happening, and as you said that Kenya now, KMD as the National Framework for Climate Services, it's actually one of the mechanisms that is actually really going to help us do a lot of this risk assessment, to make sure that we integrate what we do with the planning and the decisions in our country. So everything that we look at, is it climate resilient? Every activity, so make sure that all the interventions are climate resilient. On the issue of the rising lakes, I think you've said it all, and you've said why it's important to have this interagency coordination is that, so for example, for that one, NEMA is actually really working on the issue of the siltation to understand what's happening. Because what has been happening is that lakes around the Rift Valley have been rising. So you find that they are receding and retreating to the inhabited regions around the lake. And it's not just Lake Victoria. We've seen that with Naivasha, with Nakuru as well. So what is happening is, and that's why we're saying it's interagency coordination is important, is because all of us need to work together to understand who is playing what role. So if we are doing, and what is happening, if KMD, for example, is doing predictions or projections, and we know that extreme rainfall is going to increase, and that is the case actually we see now. That rainfall is going to be short but very intense. Like you find, we have very short episodes of intense rainfall. So we have prolonged droughts happening, and this is going into the future. Prolonged droughts happening, but then when it rains very intensely in a very short time, and that is what's and it's mainly on sort of the island regions. So the Great Rift Valley and the lakes in it. So if you're having siltation happening around there, you start seeing more of these lakes rising and retreating and sort of inundating into the farmlands or residences. And as Peter said, is that you have to make the communities understand why they need to move permanently from that region. And of course, there are challenges with the cultural dynamics and social dynamics that you mentioned. But I think to me, if they're really meant to understand why they need to go, and their loved ones will be saved there, they're dead, but they'll be okay. But now, this is not a place that you continue to live. You will be saved somewhere else, and it's fine that they can remain there. So like really making them understand why they need to move. You get what I mean? Yeah.
And let's be honest, these are really complex issues as well. And I feel like from a scientific perspective, you guys have a lot to deal with. And I do hope that you have the grace to find the right information, how to disseminate it, and uphold, like you both said, the co-creation with communities, which is very important. The moment they own the process, it becomes even easier for you as experts to engage with them.
Now, my question will be, how are you utilizing technology, for example, to disseminate this information that you're passing on to the communities that you want to co-produce with? And also, in terms of disaster preparedness, well, we have skipped that all being aware on time. What we are accusing him of failing to have heeded to. But now it has happened. How fast do we respond in terms of emergency? Yeah. And what are the technologies we have currently as a country to address that? Maybe you can just address this.
I have to comment and question in one. Want to appreciate the accuracy of the information that we share, especially on weather forecasting and so forth. But then I've realized there may be a gap on the last mile delivery to the mkulima down there, to the mama. I don't want to use the mama boga, but to the mama who is in the villages down in Kitui. I've worked with the community in Kitui, and Bithi, who works with the Met department in Kitui, usually gives information weekly to the WhatsApp groups. But then the mama there in Kaliku ward doesn't have the WhatsApp. So how do we enhance to make sure that the women and the girls and people in the marginalized community are able to receive those? Because nowadays they are very accurate. They are told, please don't do mahindi, and they continue and they plant mahindi because they did not hear that information that this rain will not support mahindi. That is one. Number two is on the issues of post-disaster risk assessment, which usually are done at every risk, and they are meant to involve the actions so that disaster will not reoccur. And they are like basics for like a future warning that since this happened, we need to do ABCD so that it will not happen again. what's the place of post-disaster risk assessment in Kenya specifically? Because we hear the story of Serikali's idea. There has been a risk assessment that have been done, and there are measures that have been recommended. So how can we collectively implement that to ensure that that one inform our future engagement? Let's we go there to Serikali's idea again and again. Thank you very much.
As to the question on the disasters happening and early warning and how fast do we respond, I deliberately avoided the response element because if we are talking about early warning, we are talking before the event. But what I can tell you for sure, Red Cross being auxiliary to government, we lead the operations for government to respond at the shortest time possible of an occurrence of an incident. And I think you'll all attest in the room that we always are there at the earliest possible in the emerging of an event to make sure that we are saving lives. And as the events and the magnitude and impacts are felt, then other players come into play. So that is how it is layered. And the response side of it, I'm not worried because there's a lot of improvement on response. What we are worried about is some of the things, now speaks to the next question of what you was asking, some of the things of post the disaster and pre the disaster. So there was the question on technology. How are we leveraging technology? Technology is a very good friend. The improved prediction is thanks to technology. Secondly, like for example, Kenya Red Cross, we are making use of drones. We are making use of geomapping using the drones. Instead of an assessment being done for several weeks by people, we can quickly deploy a drone. It can assess the magnitude in the area, take real maps, come back and inform our planning. So that's one of the ways we are using technology. And also if you want to talk about social media, if you want to talk about the platforms, if you want to talk about AI, the only thing we are realizing is we have to do a lot of ground truthing when we use technology for the reasons and the example I gave, so that there's no disparity, there's no disconnect. Technology has the potential also of disconnecting us to the point you alluded. And your questions were kind of roped in. It's like you guys planned and positioned anyway with the light touch. But just coming to what now you're saying, so that there's no disconnect with that mama or baba or whatever elder at the ground that is doing whatever they are, so that they're not disconnected, is to make sure that we don't move with technology and leave the people behind. So how do we have an integrated approach where there is technology? That area chief can use the WhatsApp forum, or the local leader can see it in the WhatsApp forum. Then can this local leader be the voice to the communities? We know very well that mama has somebody they trust. Have you seen these people? There's somebody who kisema, if you make noise that there's this, they'll not listen. But there's one person, if they see running, what will they do? Even before he says what is wrong, they will run fast, then ask him, so what is wrong? You see, so what are we saying? We have influential people on the ground. These are some of the approaches we are taking into account. There are local leaders that are listened to more than even a radio station. There are vernacular radio stations. In Budalangi, when we were doing a simulation, we were told, if you put it in Bulala FM, it is like the word of the Bible. People will just move, they will not think twice. But again, fast track simulation, we realized not everybody has a radio. So there are those who did not hear the radio. So that is where now the place of participatory scenario planning. Participatory scenario planning allows us to apply the early warning for all. In fact, allow me for a moment to say, why did we say early warning for all? The early warning initiative for all came up because we were using an approach to say, leaving no one behind. How do we have products that can reach the last mile, that can reach that mama? So I talked about the National Climate Information Services. I saw a product KMD has made. By the way, that product amazed me. During the World Meteorological Day that we were celebrating on 23rd of March, they have customized information broken down that is clearly articulated. Now, I think the disconnect now is how we take this information and communicate to that mama through somebody who she trusts and can understand. Is it in Kikamba, for example, when you say in Kitui? Or will it be beyond just Kikamba? Beyond you talking to me in Kikamba, can I believe your word? You know, that's another factor. Can I believe your word? So who does this mama believe that if I not only spoke to you in Kikamba, because that's something also we're realizing, I can speak to you in your mother tongue, but if you don't trust me, it'll be like, okay, Peter came and said this, I heard it, I will wait to see it. But we want somebody who, when they talk to you, you will act before saying, I saw it. Si mnakuanga na huo jamaa influential, akisema twendeni oh, sorry, I almost use an example. Those of you who go out, and no offense to those who don't go out, those of you who go out, see, there's that guy who will tell you, let's go here, hapa kunashika kuliko huko, si ndio? And you will go not because kumeshika, but you believe kumeshika because you said kumeshika. Or those who go to church, wakisema kesha iko mahali fulani, kesha fulani ndio inabamba, ama gig fulani ndio inabamba concert. So you go without even asking questions. Why? Because you believe that person. Guys, that's why I started by asking you who is the community, and I told you you're part of the community. That's just how it works with the community. It's not about, and in fact, these influencers, a club could be kicking more than the other, or a kesha shikaing more than the other. But because this influencer wants to go that side, you will now forget about the kicking in that side. I'm trying to drive in a point. Besides the informations, besides the language, besides even being customized, who is the influence? We say influencers. So yeah, I don't know if my colleague has, I think I've addressed all the questions. I don't know if my colleague.
I think you've actually addressed all the questions.
Yeah.
I don't.
Oh yeah, thank you. Yes. I had a feeling I was forgetting that. And my brother, you're in this space. First of all, guys, let's accept we are not where we wanted to be. But there is a lot of growth. You know, being Kenya, we had many problems. We were not even having time to think about after the disaster. We were so consumed in the disaster. But good news, we are now in that space. I've been in this practice for so long, I can confidently tell you, last year was one of the first time. Huko kwingine wanaita loss and damage, si ndio? Loss and damage. Yes, and we've been advocating for it, and I can tell you confidently, last year is one of the few times I've seen we've been able to sit down and to even try and count the loss and damage to try and see how do we build. That's why there are now conversations around resilient infrastructure, because we are realizing some of these losses are attributed to poor infrastructure, like hospitals, schools, you know, they are attributed to, like even flooding. Is it that we blocked waterways? And that's why I'm liking that Dr. Kimtai is leading that piece of risk and planning, you know. Did we assume some things? So on that post-risk assessment, it is something, in fact, I'm part of the people leading it. When I was talking about the DRM bill, the Disaster Risk Management Bill, some of these things are meant to enforce. So government, you know, sometimes some things tie them. They can allocate money for emergency, but there's nothing that requires them to allocate money for what you're saying. So the Disaster Risk Management Bill, why we are looking at policy when you're told I was doing that is because we want to have these policies in place so that when you're saying we're doing post-disaster risk management, like post-harvest losses and all those kind of things, we can quantify. And when we quantify, then now we can use it as a basis to prepare and prevent. So last year was the first time. Increasingly, you will see a lot of that happening because we have now grown into that space. Shida zetu sasa sio response peke yake. We are now able to think of how do we recover better, how do we build back better, what were the losses, how can we quantify them. Yeah, thank you.
I think I just have one parting shot so that I don't take the mic. So the an early warning system is like a feedback loop. Mm-hmm. And the reason why I'm saying this is if we use early warning information, if we use climate information, if we use forecast, if for example there's a bit of an error, or they don't work with you at that particular time, or you don't access it at the right time, or you're not able to use it in a timely manner, and then you give back that feedback and say, this is what went wrong. That is how we get to improve that system. So it's what I'm trying to say is that we need to trust in our systems, we need to work together, we need to co-produce as we say, we need to engage communities, and with that, we are sort of improving that loop and improving that system in its own. So you are continually saying that how you produce the information, how you disseminated it, this is what happened, and this is what needs to improve, and that's how it improves. And over time, and I think actually this is one of the biggest successes that has happened to our system, is that we've coordinated a lot. Like Kenya Red Cross, we've worked very closely with Kenya Red Cross now, having communities involved. We still have challenges, for example, like participatory scenario planning, for example. We're not able to fund it everywhere. And that is something that we've really been advocating for the government to do, to make sure that that system is funded well. Because what we do now, what happens now is like we're still relying on donors to support us to make sure that model is sustained. And still, it's not happening in all regions. And what we've seen as well is that you can have that engagement for some time. If it's disconnected, then you're also disconnecting that network. You're disconnecting with the people that you've been engaging with. So it sort of breaks that the whole. You remember I said the system has to continue and to feed into each other, the pillars. So if you are, I'm winding up. If we don't sort of invest in all this, if the communities cannot access the information, Baba Mboga, Mama Mboga cannot access this information, if they cannot use it at the right time, if you have the best forecast, it's useless. And, but also the more, I think my point is, the more we use the information, the more we feed into the information, the more we co-produce the information, we are strengthening the system, and that is what we want to do.
Let's appreciate them both. It's clear that we are hungry, not for breakfast necessarily, but for information, for restoration action, and we need all hands on deck to be able to really actually be part of the process. There's so much information coming from these experts, and I'll assure you, keep in touch with them, follow them after this. I'm sure they'll be happy to engage you. But before I let them go and I let Rehan take over from me, I want to quickly just give them some early warning system because it might get colder wherever you're going, and I hope you can have some hot or coffee if you don't just mind unwrapping, and then you can take a quick photo before you take your seats. Thank you.